Good morning, everyone. You're listening to www.theriotradio.com. This is Symposium, talk radio show, and today we're having the God debate. The debate we've been dancing around and towards for the past couple of weeks, and we have a multitude of guests. I'm your host, Keegan Gwydolin.
And I'm your host, Roman Chodan. We have 6 guests in here today. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm guest number 1. My name is Graydon.
Okay, I guess guest number 2, Tony.
Guest number 3, Bradley.
Guest number 3, John. Peace.
4.
Guest number
3,
5,
4, yeah.
Now that we got our counting straighted out, I'm guest number 6, Kevin.
And we are expecting Isaac to be in later, and anyone who wants to come on down. We're in the Marketplace Cafeteria, Durham College, behind the giant black veil. You share an opinion if you'd like. So, let's jump right in. We have, like I said, been sort of dancing around this topic for a long time, and I think it's time to hit it straight on with only 2 shows left, and I think we'll need every second of them. So, Christians in the room, present your first argument for why God exists.
It seems kind of
Okay, Keegan. Okay. Well, let me maybe take it back to the Bible. Romans 1:20. It says that God's invisible attributes, his divine nature, have been clearly perceived, being understood in what has been made, so that men are without excuse. So I believe that our first argument would be, open your eyes and look around. How could there not be a God?
Well,
Go.
Well, in my eyes, I see a world in which a God is not necessary for everything that is around us. I mean, we have on our show multiple times addressed evolution, and that the overall process of evolution, not specifically applied to the biological sense, is very accepted. You know, something always gets better over time based on some sort of selection. Are the levels good, Keegan? Or, okay. And so I think that if you disregard the time it takes for evolution and think that, and with our evidence that there is a lot of time that has been since the universe has started, that it makes sense that evolution and the evolution of the universe is a viable option for the origin of life and everything. And so I don't see that there's a God necessary for this. So to me,
right, and we would be a little bit divided on how old this Earth actually is, but regardless, I would say that time is not your friend. I know you said that over time things get better, but I would challenge that and say that and a very simple example be that I build a house, I leave it over time. And, I leave it for 100 years. Well, if it's a well-made house, maybe it'll still be standing. Like, hopefully. Maybe not the stupid little things we put up today. Right. But, an old house, maybe. And 200 years, maybe standing. 1,000 years, probably not, unless it's, a castle. And then maybe it's still standing. 10,000 years, I guess it's probably just dust. Or maybe not dust, but given enough time, and it will be.
But maybe I shouldn't have used the word better, but more specific to the environment that it's in. And with the house analogy or the castle analogy, that's kind of, you're using a static object to make the analogy of
sure.
evolution.
Well, let's talk about something that's not static. Let's talk about animals, creatures, human beings. The status of animals today. Are we getting more species, or are we getting less species as time goes forward?
Okay, so I don't know the exact answer to that, but I know that in some areas, in some niches are being destroyed. The ocean temperatures are rising, so that's destroying some niches of the. What's that?
Polar ice caps are melting.
Yeah, and coral reefs are dying. All the niches that those beautiful fish live in, they're dying off. But in other areas, there's speciation occurring, and that will lead to a new arisal of different species.
Right, and
so you were losing some and you're gaining some.
Well, and I would say the one thing that evolution is based on, the foundation, is that we do have time. Like evolution, we have time. This world has been around for billions of years. It God willing, except you won't really say that. It's been, it'll be around for billions more. But the thing is yes, we have time, and so given enough time, speciation, though we can't see it, though we can't observe it in real time, but over time, given enough time, it will happen. And we can debate if speciation and bigger evolution actually does happen, but Given that this is a fairly slow process, with the rapid rate of what do you call it? Extinction. Is speciation? Is it going to catch up? Like, which one's winning? I mean, are we losing or gaining more? Like, it's a slow process. Is it going to speed up, or are we going to go back to nothing? Like, what's the future?
Well, I want to just draw this back because I don't want to get into the evolution debate, right? And we could, and we have gone on for hours about this, but it seems like the real point of your argument was God says, look around at all I've created, and this is your first evidence for God. But our counter-argument then would be, well, you look at a tree and see God's creation, I look at a tree and see the product of millions of years of evolution. It's not a valid proof if there is
an equally as likely
an equally as likely alternative for it. It's basic logic.
Well, I believe it's still valid. I mean, your opinion, your opinion is that
it's valid.
That God didn't do it,
right?
But if God said He did it, and it's right in front of you, the evidence is there. It's tangible. You can touch it, and so I think it's still a valid point that I say God made this, and the proof is it's not a concept and that we can't touch. I can say it's right there, and you can touch that tree, and you can say, I can touch this evidence. I just don't believe it came from him.
By that same token, I could say a fairy created Brad. Now I have the exact same amount of evidence as you.
A fairy probably did create Brad.
I said a fairy created Brad,
Just
and
so
Brad's
you know,
right there.
a fairy did not create me. Just so we're clear, and do not come back to this point.
It was a hypothetical argument. We'll have the debate whether Brad was created by a fairy at a later date.
I'm glad to hear that, Brad. To address the question,
yeah,
three things that I think are important to evidence the proof of God that I feel like have encouraged my belief in God outside of the Bible. Okay,
right.
One,
which is where we like to
yeah.
come from.
Yeah.
Okay. One is the beauty itself. Is that that this Graydon talked about the fact that this creation is has been made. Well, evolution does not explain beauty, but God does. If there's a creator, if there's an artist that's doing all this. Now, granted, I understand that sometimes beauty comes into play to attract, maybe we have a cardinal, mates, those kinds of things. We have a cardinal in our backyard, and the red cardinal is more beautiful than the female cardinal. Okay, but there's other parts of beauty that cannot be explained from this scientific.
Sorry, I just want to. Can I just ask
Yeah.
you, what do you mean by beauty? Because beauty is a very subjective term.
Yeah, it's been said beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So
Yeah,
Just the fact that there is beauty.
the existence of.
The existence of beauty.
But that isn't beauty a human construct? Because I don't think that any other animal can. I don't.
has the concept.
Yeah,
of
has the
beauty.
concept of beauty. We'll stare at
Right.
something that is termed beautiful by humans, right?
Right, and so therefore the question is there therefore a God? Is there a God that has created human beings in His own image? And no wonder why we would appreciate.
But now you've got a
his
circular
beauty.
argument where you're saying that
No,
humans see beauty. God made things beautiful, which is why they are beautiful things. But He also made humans to see beauty.
Sure.
But that's a circular argument because it depends necessarily on the existence of God.
Well, there's beautiful things whether we see them or not.
But we are the ones who put the label of beautiful on it.
right? Like in Africa, right? I think it's Africa. They have the rings around the neck, and they elongate their necks.
Right.
Those are very beautiful women, and I personally do not find that attractive to have like a 3-foot neck.
Right. right.
But many people do.
Right.
People who live in that society
Right.
do, and there's many accounts of in the Renaissance times, someone who was like obese was considered a beautiful person.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's all these subjective.
I know, but I'm just getting to the point. Why is there beauty?
And I think,
why
I think
is there morality?
I think what John's saying about beauty is less about the variance in cultures,
Right.
and more like let's
the
consider
concept
well,
itself.
Yeah, so
and-
let's keep it
concept itself.
philosophical.
and even like I guess
Okay, yeah.
you know in considering a creator God, probably the best example would be a sunset. That's something that I think John is saying he appreciates the world that God has made, and that's one thing that draws him to this God is just the nature of a rainbow or a sunset. There's something beautiful about it, and he wants to know more. He wants to know more about this creator.
So So the three things I would say is one is the concept of beauty. Does beauty exist? It leads us to the fact that there has to be somebody who made beauty. And therefore, we would say God. Second of all, we talked about this a few weeks ago. Morality. Is there a moral law? Not that we all agree which is lawful, but there is a moral law. And then the third thing is purpose and meaning. If I'm just here on this earth and become worm food, I don't have any purpose and meaning. But God, if there's a God, then all of a sudden that extends purpose and meaning. So those are three things for me that at least give me attention to the fact that there is a God. Of course, I'd take it a lot further than that when we get into the Bible, but those three things
Right.
we could deal with.
Now, so your first argument from beauty, you said that evolution cannot, and scientific, I guess, mechanism can't explain this beauty, but we think very clearly that it does. Like you gave the example of a sunset or a rainbow. We know the exact mechanism of how that happens. It's just, from our point of view, something that happens naturally.
Yeah, it's a product
Which-
of the laws of physics.
Yeah.
Refraction.
Which doesn't have any deeper meaning. That's what I think a lot of people have trouble with, is that meaning exists in the universe only because humans are there.
To give a meaning to it.
To give meaning to it, or to have even the concept of meaning.
If I could jump in really quickly, I would say that when John talks about beauty, we need to think outside the box a little bit here. So evolution and science, science can explain how beauty is utilized and how it's propagated. Obviously the more beautiful cardinal, if you have two male cardinals, one is pristine and perfect and the other is shabby and disgusting, then the female is going to go for the beautiful one, right? That's how humans work as well. And so we can understand how the creation takes advantage of beauty, and then how this beauty would be propagated, because the beautiful would be selected for it. But think outside even that, and I think what John is saying is to even appreciate, that there might be deeper meaning behind this beauty. Where did this beauty actually come from? It maybe points towards something bigger, a God. He appreciates this beauty. He sees it. Science can explain how it's propagated and taken advantage of.
I definitely understand where you're coming from, but I have trouble with that as an argument. I see it as just as likely a possibility that God is responsible for the beauty as like natural forces or aliens or fairies. Like there's equal likelihood. Logically, there's no reason to believe that God is the one responsible for everything that we're seeing versus some other mythical creature.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Okay, but
Kevin?
No, go ahead, Tony.
Tony?
Okay, but I just wanted to address that. But it's you probably heard this argument before. But when you see things that are constructed before you, things that are already made, things that are well designed. Like say, if I'm writing a program, which I do all the time, to calculate the prime number from 1 to a billion, and it requires a lot of for loops, probably an array to store the information. I could go on about the details, but in the final product, that would be this program that you could run that executes and gives me exactly what I want. And one would look at that program and say, okay, so who wrote this program? And then they would hopefully see Tony and say, oh, okay, that's a good program. But you wouldn't ever look at that and say, oh, someone smashed their hands on the keyboard. And when you see pattern, when you see design, especially of an intricate level, it's very apparent that there is a creator. And in terms of the creation that we see around us, it's much more intricate than just a simple program that I could ever write. And you said earlier, Keegan, that there's an equal likelihood, equal probability even. But I would argue against that.
Like in a logical argument.
Okay, and I guess in a logical standing, but in terms of what's more likely to happen when you see design, I don't think what's more likely to happen is the fact that all these came from chaos, and somehow from a state of chaos
chaos made order.
Yeah, chaos made order, which is not how things work.
As opposed to order making order. Like what's the more logical?
Yeah, chaos leads to more chaos, and the world goes further towards a state of chaos.
Well, so you said a lot of things in there, and one thing I wanted to address is that you said that like all the intricate details, right? Well, we have the laws, because you guys will say that God created the laws of physics, but the laws of physics explain most of these phenomena, right? It's like if you poured gasoline on water in a contained environment, so no animals were harmed or whatever, you see you would see like the rainbow, see like a spectrum and think, oh, that's beautiful. You see a rainbow, oh, that's beautiful. You see a sunset, oh, that's beautiful, right? But it's just the laws. It's just like the laws of physics at work. There's
but
nothing
you're missing
special
the point of what they're saying.
They're
not talking about what produces beauty.
No, I'm saying that the concept of beauty is purely human construct.
Yeah,
that's
but why do only humans have this view of beauty? Not too many animals.
Because we've evolved it. We've evolved enough.
It's a byproduct of our evolution.
It's a byproduct of our evolution. But let me hit the other thing.
Where is that written into the genome? I mean, where do you see the beauty recognizing gene? This is an abstract concept that somehow I would say it's completely separate from science, like you were talking about. I mean, with these the standard of beauty for women and for men in different countries and different cultures is very different. But that's not written into the genome. That's not written into. I mean, because a woman looks this way in this culture and this way in this culture, that doesn't give her a reproductive advantage necessarily. I mean, where's that written into your genome?
It comes out of, to me, like we talked about this before, but it comes out of so humans evolved bigger, denser brains than most animals on the planet. So we have, as a byproduct, evolved these specialities that's unique to us. And one of them is a very large social network, not Facebook, but a social understanding, and that has evolved.
All right, I want to stop the evolution debate once again, before it gets any further, and address the points that Tony and Graydon were making, because it seems that you're.
Like an elephant, Keegan never forgets.
There's Fairy Brad. The man made by fairies.
So, Tony, it seems that the main point of your argument was that it's more likely, and seems more likely, that something of great order was created by something of equal or greater order, correct?
Yes.
And not from a chaotic system.
Yeah.
But I would say the exact opposite, because when you look at it from a logical standpoint, if there was a creator being who is at least as complex as its creation, then that creator needs to have a creator of even greater complexity.
Yeah.
Now, I know you'll say that God has always existed, and so he has no creator, but that is essentially a logical cop-out.
Well, it's only a logical cop-out if God was created, because if God was created, then he'd be bound by certain laws of the Creator that created him. But if he's not created, if he's God, then he's not bound by, because what we are suggesting here is
I understand.
What we're saying is that this world has been created, and so whoever created it bound it by certain laws. He told the waves this far and no further. Like it's even like we take for granted that the water doesn't even just
that
float up and hit us in the face.
The Christian God can easily be the source of all the laws of physics, and
he's the lawgiver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can see that.
Okay.
But I'm talking not about physical laws or science anymore. I'm talking about logic.
Okay.
And from a logical standpoint, if something requires, if you go from your argument, and one thing must have a creator of equal or greater complexity, then by that logic, your God must also have a creator. However, if we're talking about something akin to evolution, and I don't want to get into the scientific aspect, but what evolution offers is a method of getting from the less complex to the more complex, which allows us to sort of bypass the logical fallacy that you hit, which is known as infinite regression.
So what you're saying is that because what we're saying is that the creator who created this has to be more complex than his creation.
Yeah.
And by logic, that means that he's also bound by laws and has a creator that created him. Is what you're saying. You're saying that that's logic.
By the same logic, yes.
Or he can be the one who gave the rules I agree that he's more complex than his I agree that he's more complex than his creation, but I don't believe that logic necessitates that he have a creation as well.
But it is
creator as well.
Simple logic. For one thing to be true, then the other must also be true.
Well,
I'm not sure if that's true.
Work if it's a closed system. The universe is a closed system. But we would say that God works outside of the closed system, and therefore he can be the first cause. He has to be.
Now, but again, you're hitting the wrong things. Logic by nature is something that is universal. This is not even isolated to physical laws at all. We're not saying that anything is true, we're saying that it's valid. And if your first argument that something of greater complexity must create the less complex, then by that same logic that creator must have a greater complex, more complex creator, despite the fact that you say that he's not bound by those laws of logic. Through logic, he is. You can't bypass those laws.
Let me throw this at you then, by logic and everything.
Yeah.
If if we're saying that the creator is more complex than his creation,
yeah,
and the creation is using their logic to explain the creator, isn't that a logical fallacy in the first place?
Hang on, that got a little convoluted.
No,
did you see what I'm saying?
I understand that.
Did you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, then I guess we lose the argument because that's another cop out. It's like, well, he's God, he's omnipotent.
It's not.
How can your petty human logic?
I mean, I think Grader makes a really good point. If we could explain God in this brain, he would cease to be God.
I think, as the Bible says, we can appreciate him, as John said, appreciate his beauty. We can see his creation, which the Bible simply says, so that men are without excuse. That's all it says. It doesn't say so men will fully understand me and comprehend me. It just says so men know that I exist. I would say that if by definition the creation is less complex than the creator, then the creation can't hope to fully explain and comprehend the creator, because we're limited by being less complex in the first place. Our foundation, we're working on a faulty foundation,
Right.
and you can say that's a cop out, but I think if that's the truth, then it's not a cop out. It's the truth.
But
all right.
It goes the same way the other way, though, doesn't it? Does it not? Does it go the same way to say that you can't believe in God because you don't know his logic? Because there's a book here that was written by humans, even whether or not it was God affected how they wrote it. It doesn't matter. Humans wrote it. Humans translated it. It's all everything that's written in the Bible is the result of humans. So we look at anything in the Bible through our human logic. So so God tries to communicate to us using the Bible, using human logic that is, as we see, has lots of contradictions in it. So it seems as though that we can apparently outlogic.
You make a good point, Roman, and I would say the Bible, the way the Bible is set up, and the way that God testifies about himself. He says that he's the one that initiated this relationship. As far as belief and proof of his existence, it wasn't men who were searching for God. It was God who first initiated and came down to men. And that's a very important order to understand. So even when you said, by my own logic, I'm saying that even belief by God, belief in God is impossible. I'd say there is an element of an impossibility to a belief in God without God intervention, and that's where we come to the story of Jesus, and the whole point of the Bible is that God, because he loved mankind so much, came down to our level, not because he had to, but because he could, and he explains himself with things that we can understand. He reveals himself with the things that we can appreciate, and he's the one who initiates understanding, belief. I believe that wisdom, the root of wisdom is God. The root of wisdom is a healthy fear of who God is, and that's the foundation of wisdom, is a fear of God, a respect of who he is. And when that foundation is chopped away at, when you start questioning, can God do this? Can God do that? Maybe he has to have a creator. When you start chopping away at God, then you start chopping away at wisdom as well, because the root of wisdom is a fear and healthy respect of who God is in the first place.
So are you suggesting that we should be non-thinking individuals and just follow God through this sort of, I would say, blind faith, just no questioning of God? Is that what you're suggesting?
It's the equivalent of anecdotal evidence.
No. I would say God has given us minds, and we need to use them. But we need to always respect and understand that the giver of this mind being God, and understand that true wisdom and the foundation of our knowledge is God himself. So be thinking people, but
just not thinking about whether or not God exists.
Well, no. Actually, if that verse I started at the very start, Romans 1:20, where I said, God, as he self-testifies about himself, he says, I become so obvious by what I've made that men are without excuse. The verse goes on to say, but men, in their own greed, suppress the truth. They take this truth and they suppress it. And then the rest of the chapter goes on to explain the consequence of suppressing the truth. And so basically, they're cut, like I said, if the beginning of knowledge, if the root of knowledge is the fear of God, then if you chop away at that foundation, which Romans 1:20 says that these men suppress the truth, chaos ensues. You see what happens after that. They've chopped away at their foundation, and the whole world has fallen into chaos, and they've actually become, it says in Romans, foolish in their thinking. Their minds have become futile, and their thoughts and their logic have become futile and flawed, because they've chopped away at the foundation of knowledge. You see, you can't go both ways. You can start with God and then think, but I don't think you can think and then you can chop away at God, and then it has to begin with God. God has to be the foundation.
Okay, so like what you said with they suppress the truth. So our role as scientists, we don't suppress any valid evidence. We simply weigh evidence against other evidence, and that's the way it works. We can't say, "Oh no, that doesn't count because we don't like it." It's whatever is the facts, and whatever the facts lead to, that dictates our overall decision. So there may be anecdotal evidence for God, which I would consider the Bible to be a part of, but there's like for evolution and stuff like that goes against the Bible, which Christians basically have. It's the foundation of Christianity, or a large part of it, I would say. It goes against that, so it goes against God. So I think that as scientists, the evidence that we've found to support what is commonly accepted in the scientific community now is, that's how it is. We're not against God. We just say, here's the facts, and here's where we have to go with it. And this is the logical route that we have to take.
And I would say, that, I mean, as a scientist, yes, our job is to be logical. And as a scientist myself, I would say that in my thinking about this topic, I've been very logical. You know, I look at evidence, I go to class, I listen to lecture. We just walked out a genetics lecture, most of us. And I listen to that, and I listen to these things, and I listen to this complexity, and I listen to this, and I weigh it on the scale in my mind, and I say, okay, what makes more sense? You know, based on what we've learned, what makes more sense, God or no God? To me, overwhelmingly God.
Just closer to the microphone.
Mike, yeah.
To me, it's overwhelmingly God. And I mean, the thing is that I think a lot of times, you know, I feel that science can't explain everything, and that's one of my biggest reasons for believing in God, is that, you know, I love science. Science is my passion. It's one of my biggest passions is biology, and knowing, I mean, the complexity of the body, the complexity of everything. But I don't feel like when I go home at the end of the day, science doesn't answer my questions. Science gives me answers to material, physical questions, but when I go home and I'm sitting there and I'm discouraged, science does not give me any reason to keep going. Science doesn't encourage me. It doesn't give me hope. It doesn't give me a purpose. Science just gives me raw facts. But when I go home and I need, you know, I need something to base my life on. I need a purpose. I need a morality. I need a use for my life, and that cannot be found in science.
But that's not the argument.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It cannot be found in science, and science doesn't claim to preach that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would say anyway.
Yeah, I would say as well. Yeah.
So,
and that would be my argument.
But that's certainly not evidence for God. Just because you feel a certain way and one explanation doesn't explain, you know, how you. Like, it doesn't offer comfort, basically. Because it seems like you're looking for... your evidence for God is that science doesn't give you comfort. God gives you comfort.
It's not comfort as much as purpose.
Purpose.
But I think the thing is, if there was no God, if we were just the product of science and science alone, why would we even have a concept of purpose?
Because it's motivational.
But there's a difference between...
Because, okay... Let's see. Because we have evolved a sense of purpose, and like for you, you've given this sense of purpose to God. You say, I'm here to serve God through whatever path He lays before me, essentially.
Yeah.
So now, instead of sitting around and doing nothing with your life, you're going to... Strive, maybe become a doctor. I believe that's your aspiration.
It is.
And then you're going to be a successful mate, and you're going to reproduce profusely and spread your genes. And that's how it goes down. Like,
I would... Sorry, Brad.
From my point of view.
Because I would attribute, like, a feeling of purpose to, like I said, the social construct of the brain. That's a byproduct of our large brain. Like...
And it's useful
animals,
to feel purposeful.
People. I think that most Christians would believe that animals or dogs don't have a feeling of purpose.
Yeah, they don't have a soul.
Right. So they don't have a soul. They don't have a feeling of purpose. But yet they still live their lives. Right. They don't just my life doesn't mean anything, so I'm just gonna just sit here and be comfortable. They strive to live. And that's what I'm trying to. That's what we're trying to say is the sense of purpose is merely a byproduct of your large brain.
But I think you're taking the idea of like reproduction and survival and making that a purpose. I don't think that most if I went around this room and asked most of you, what's your goal? What's your purpose? What's the meaning behind you? Like at your core, why do you have meaning? I wouldn't think most of you would be like, oh, so I can help evolution go on, and so I can have a nice baby.
No, that's not absolutely right.
That's just something you do.
I would go as far as to say that purpose is, again, a human construct. I say that subconsciously, I want to have a purpose, and then I designate a purpose, rather than, like Roman said, lower, quote unquote, lower animals who don't have that same drive. It's true, but I would say that there is no true purpose. There's no definite, finite
and that's a
purpose.
Good thing for you to come to as a scientist. I mean, you have to come to that conclusion.
Right. And Yeah, that's what I would say.
I mean, as an atheist scientist.
Yeah, so I would say that, from my point of view, there is no purpose. You're asking God is there because He is my purpose and He gave me purpose. I would say there is no purpose, and so I don't need God.
Actually,
Go ahead, Tony.
Okay, but I want to address some things that's been popping up over and over and over again. You keep saying things like, "Oh, purpose. That's a human construct." Or even like, was selfishness a human construct? I can't remember.
No, selflessness is a human construct.
Okay, but let's just go back to purpose. And purpose being a human construct, and I guess beauty too being a human construct. But then, a lot of times when we talk about other things, you say, "Oh, that's derived from evolution." So how can something be always just a human construct in terms of, I guess, only humans have it, but evolution still exists, which should give equal merit for all animals to have those same traits. But yet we find so many things that are only applicable to humans. And to me, we're still talking about arguments for God. That is a strong argument for God. We are created in God's image, and that will explain why there are so many things that I guess only human constructs, because it was, I guess, designed that way. It wasn't just kind of like evolved naturally, because if that were the case, we would see that in so many other animals.
What would we see in other animals? Because we do see a lot of human traits, quote unquote.
Let's say purpose.
Animals.
I'm not just talking about reproduction and propagation of species, but
all these things we've been talking about: love, beauty, purpose, meaning.
Yeah.
I think this is the product of the human rise to consciousness, and the fact that we touched on this, I think, in one of the evolution debates, but humans. I think the most unique thing about humans is that we have achieved this sort of
sentience.
Sentience, essentially. So a self-awareness of who we are in relation to the world and universe around us and the other, organisms that we interact with. A lot of most other organisms, develop only the amount of awareness that they need to survive, whereas we sort of, as a byproduct of our incredibly high level of sentience, have invented these things such as love, such as beauty, such as purpose, things that from a social standpoint we see as integral to our humanity, but I would say they're merely a byproduct of our large brain, which evolved from the need to catch, meat.
So let's go back just to love. If we love so well, and that's such a not just a. Could we use? I guess would you say love is a value then that humans have?
I would
created?
say love is an evolved emotion which leads us to be monogamous, which is evolutionarily in our history. Was preferable.
Was preferable. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a whole other subject, but yes. Because if a female is females always donate more in the mating ritual. They donate 9 months of their time plus far more resources, whereas men donate only a single sperm. And so females usually want the promise of some sort of fidelity from a male to ensure that they'll be around to help care for the child and raise the child. And that's how I would say our concept of love evolved, is that we feel this so that we want to be monogamous, so that females will want to mate with us. From, again, a male point of view.
You could also say it may encourage the health of males, too.
Yeah, exactly. And it encourages the survival of our genes.
And another thing is, and Keegan's going to, punch me in the face for this, but so, just get you ready. But I want to bring up the concept of feral children, right? It's true. It applies so easily. Children, I have it on Wikipedia here. It's basically, I just want to get a little bit more read up on it. But it's people who have grown up with zero human contact, who are unable. They basically are human bodies with animal behavior. They can't learn languages. They can't walk upright. They can't use the toilet. They can't do all these things that many people be like, yeah, I've been doing that since I was 3 years old. It's because they aren't encultured, as they use the term here. They aren't encultured with humans. That's somewhere in there. You can read if you want. And so so love might not even be an evolutionary byproduct, but a social. I think that humans have evolved to a certain point, and now that our physical evolution is a lot slower than our social evolution. Our social evolution is immense. We have figured out so many things that are better and for worse, and so the concept of feral children is that these people have not been exposed to love, to certain emotions. They basically exist to live, and they people don't even consider them to be human beings based on their activity.
I see the example here is Mowgli from the Jungle Book.
Well, no, there's real cases.
Well, and I guess we would have to meet in a case like a feral child and see if this child was incapable of receiving, at least at the first, receiving love, and then maybe over time getting enough love, then maybe you could give love as well.
But anyway, I want to draw this back up because we're getting too in depth, and I want to keep it highly philosophical. You want to say something?
Oh, that's okay.
I do have a question. I have a question for Roman that I don't want to eventually. If I can just ask it.
Okay, sure.
That I think applies to...
For me?
Yes, for you. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
It has nothing to do with feral children, but I'll look into that more. I'll actually read that Wikipedia thing. And
yeah, I'll probably look into a little bit more than just Wikipedia as well. Go ahead, yeah.
Here's my question. And you might not see how it relates at first, but you attended the worship night.
I did.
The campus church worship night on Sunday nights.
I did.
Where, for those of you that don't know what this is a bunch of the Christian students on campus get together on Sunday nights, UP 1500, 7:30, there's a plug. But they get together on Sunday nights, and it's like a church service in a way. It's a worship service. It's a full worship service, which includes singing to God, reading the Bible, learning what God has taught us. It's just a full worship service devoted to our relationship with God, devoted to God in glory and praise in God. Mm-hmm. And tell me, especially with relation to the singing, because I read your blog. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Roman has a blog as well. There's another.
I do have a blog.
Tell me about.
All right.
Tell me about your experience.
Yes,
tell me about your experience.
Well, okay. So in my experience,
and try to bring it back to the idea of whether God exists or not.
Well, I've got somewhere I want to take this.
Okay. Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
I accept. So I saw, because I unfortunately couldn't stay for all of it, so I had to leave right after the singing.
Okay.
So basically what it was actually Kevin here was kind of leading it up.
Yep.
And they sung for about 40 minutes, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all, like, I don't know where the songs, like, came from. Just, like, your current artists, right? Current-ish artists?
Mostly.
Yeah, so just, like, they're, like, light rock or whatever, how you explain the songs. But to me, the songs are very...
Keep going. Who's welcome?
Oh,
we're out of time. Are you serious?
No.
Oh, okay.
The songs preached. God is great. God is loving. God is all this.
Yep.
But it seemed like so. Forgive me, but it seemed so cultish.
Okay.
It seemed that it just over and over again. There was. Repeated verses or choruses is the term. I'm not very good with musical terms, but so it just seemed like over and over repetitive. Yeah. God loves you. God loves you. God.
Sure.
Indoctrination is the perfect word I would use.
Okay.
And it seemed very creepy to me.
I do gotta say, most songs do have verses that repeat a couple times.
It was like 11 times. It was more than.
Okay, and that's part of the Christian culture, and it's also part of. Keeping the focus on God as well. Like a lot of these songs are taken right out of the Bible, and but I'm more interested in the experience that you observed people worshiping, Christians worshiping.
I did.
Tell me about what you saw them doing and how you can explain that.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a huge emotional stimulus.
Yes.
Like it's in my blog if you want to read it.
Yes.
And I mean, like I said, I understand why people are Christians, because this is such a huge stimulus emotionally. You know, people have their eyes closed, their arms up, you know, swaying back and forth. Some people, like, you know, singing the words with, like, all their heart, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can fully understand why these people would want to do that, of course. And that's. I don't know if I'm answering your question there. But
no, you are. That,
yeah.
So, yes,
that's what I saw. And to me,
yes, because that's what I remember reading from your blog.
Yeah.
That's what I was wanting to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. I wrote my blog. Yes.
This is where I want to go with this. Is the experience that you observed.
Yep.
You can explain that. You can explain when you see these people. They have their hands up. They have their eyes closed. They're singing with all their hearts. They're having an experience.
They are.
And you can explain that experience biologically. I mean, you can say, there's endorphins that are being released.
Yep.
There's this and that. This can be explained biologically. But does it make the experience any less credible? Does it take away? Even though you can explain it biologically, does it not mean? Does that mean that something's not happening?
It means that the person's getting really excited. Do you mean? Are you asking me? Does that mean they're having this experience, but do you think that maybe it could be because of God?
What I'm saying is these debates that we have, and they're very intellectual, but I think sometimes your logic and your relying on biology, it takes away from the bigger picture. You can explain this experience. Endorphins are being released, and this is how the body is reacting to this stimuli, right? But does that make the experience any less credible? Or conversely, that sunset. That sunset is just a refraction of light. So biologically,
I don't know
can
the
explain.
exact
Yeah.
But it probably is.
But biologically, I can explain how that sunset came into being. But does that make that sunset any less beautiful because you can explain it biologically, or that worship experience any less meaningful because you can explain how the body is responding when this is happening?
Okay, so
are these experiences, and is that sunset? Is there not credibility? Is there not? Do you see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, and I say there's no credibility. I say there's lots of...
Okay.
This person said, I had this experience, and this is how I feel. I said, yeah, you have all the right to be. I can completely understand why you see that a sunset is beautiful, why you feel so excited when you're worshiping, but that has no weight. That has no bearing. If I said,
it's not proof for God's existence.
I read an article about evolution, and I was so jazzed up. Because you're a scientist and you like reading about these kind of things.
Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's anecdotal evidence that cannot be used.
Sure.
And moreover, even if it were like confirmed or whatever, it's not evidence for God's existence.
Well, how could the beauty be confirmed, or how could the experience be confirmed?
Well, what you need is what you'd call in logic a deductive argument, in which the truth of the premises guarantee the truth of the conclusion. All I see from religion is inductive arguments in which the truth of the premises make the conclusion likely. Now,
that's being
could you maybe give us an example of how science gives us a deductive argument or deductive evidence that God doesn't exist?
Oh, science does not say that God does not exist. By no means. No. What science...
Can it tell us anything deductively?
No. All it can tell us is that deductively, and from a logical standpoint, not even from a scientific standpoint, that the existence of God is just as likely as the existence of any other mythical being or any other God that's ever existed. The existence of, the Judeo-Christian God is just as likely as the existence of Zeus or, Allah or Krishna.
Don't name them off.
But I think with all of those faiths, now I'm not an expert in world religion, but it seems to me that Christianity is very unique in the sense that Christianity got started on the belief that this event, Jesus' ministry on earth and his life, death, and resurrection, happened in time, space, history. People were so overwhelmed by the evidence.
But we're not talking about the existence of Jesus. We're talking about the existence of the
one of Jesus' central claims
God.
that he was actually God, right? So if Jesus is who he says he did, and he basically based his all the evidence in, I'm going to die and I'm going to raise again, that can give us a pretty good picture into, wow, God might actually exist if this actually did happen, right?
But
Well,
go ahead. Okay. I don't know what Keegan's going to say, but the problem with that is like I said, it's anecdotal evidence. There is more logical explanations for how Jesus apparently died and apparently was resurrected.
Can you give me a few, please?
Well, yeah. Okay, so I don't know the story 100%, right? But so he was crucified, he died, put in a tomb. They came for his body, wasn't there, and then he was alive and he appeared to his disciples.
Yeah.
So yeah,
really good.
So awesome.
For someone who doesn't know, good job.
That's just what I've picked up. Anyway, so I think that it's possible that either. So if you said, okay, Jesus died on the cross, his body wasn't in the tomb. Maybe it wasn't even placed in there to begin with. Jesus came back to his followers. Maybe it was a different person. You know what I mean? Even if it was a different person, it's more likely that a supernatural occurrence happened, that the law of conservation of mass was broken just for that.
It would seem to me that conclusion, though, comes out of your atheistic assumptions, right? It isn't a possibility that a man can rise from the dead and God can come to earth because of your assumptions.
But we make no assumptions. We simply state logically what proof is there, and our backing as scientists. And I think our backing as scientists gives us more tools to use, and that's what I
would say the logical evidence is there. We have 4 eyewitness accounts, and we have a church that started 2,000 years ago that's still going, based on this fact that this man died and lived again. Like, that's the whole reason the church exists. Is
right, but that's highly controversial as fact, quote unquote fact. That can be highly debated.
If you distrust history,
if we distrust the Bible, the thing is. There have been other holy texts to other religions that are just as old, that have more eyewitness accounts, that have been just as well preserved. Of course you would, because you're a Christian and you believe the Bible is.
But which one's Keegan? Because sometimes, we're
I know
not to be, because I like you, I like you, we're friends, but sometimes we say things and we can't get away with throwing out a blanket statement like that. Like, we have to be, if we say something, it has to be backed up by fact, and you're going to challenge it.
True enough.
So which ones?
Okay, I don't specifically know. I don't know the name of the Hindu holy book, but they have over. Over. It was either 700 or 7,000.
Deities.
No, not reincarnations of their Messiah. Who, and each one of these is supposedly an eyewitness account. No, Hindu. Not
my bad.
So yeah, they have allegedly, according to their holy book, again, eyewitness accounts of each of these reincarnations. So essentially, 700 or 7,000.
Have you read the book?
No, I haven't. I haven't read the book. I haven't read the book.
So it's a lot. So it's a lot of hearsay then. Like, it's a lot of hearsay.
Well, So is the entire Bible, though.
But we can quote the Bible. We can quote the eyewitness accounts.
No, I get what you're saying, and I don't have the. No, I haven't read it. I took a world religions course. That's as far as my knowledge extends.
The Bible, and maybe this is a plug for the event happening this Wednesday. This Wednesday, 5 p.m. UA 2120. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. But but the Bible is it's a historically accurate book. I mean, the eyewitness accounts contained within the Bible are not hearsay and presumption and fabrication.
That I heard very
abstract,
recently, very specifically, that there is no record in any other works of Jews ever being held as slaves in Egypt, ever.
Okay.
So that throws the entire Moses story.
But we're talking. Well, wait a minute.
Window.
Jews being slaves in Egypt. We're talking. How many thousands of years ago?
Well, it doesn't matter, right? If you're going on the assumption that every story in the Bible is eyewitness,
but I'm just saying, are there even accounts of the Jews that old that could say that they were doing something else at the time?
I can't speak to that.
I would say there isn't.
I know that in Egypt, there's
history only goes so far back, and
the Egyptians were good They documented stuff back.
I'd just like to say something quickly. If the biblical account is true, and if you read the story at all, God kind of humiliated the Egyptians for them to leave. So it would kind of make sense that Egypt would not want to record that in the history if it actually happened as the Bible states.
but there is no other records anywhere else in any other civilization.
Apparently, there's minimal, and I'm not quoting anything. I'm quoting the God Delusion. And so I don't know how true this is, but I'm pretty sure Richard Dawkins did his homework. There's minimal historical evidence of Jesus claiming to be the Messiah. Right? There's a lot of...
You mean minimal
outside of the Bible?
Yeah, like not within the Bible.
Yeah. Well, there are very few works that exist outside the Bible, and that's really not a fault on our part. It's just that you look at ancient, and we went over this a few debates ago. But you look at ancient source of text, and there just isn't that much ancient text that's been preserved like the Bible has been preserved, and it'd be nice to have some corroborating books that
and I think that
beside
there is. I just add there definitely is. Men like Josephus, Tacitus.
Sure. Exactly. Thales, 50 AD.
Yeah,
Julius Africanus, 200 AD. So. He quotes, he talks about Jesus dying and there was darkness. That's what he says in his book. He says in his statement. He quotes Thales. And so there's some extra biblical accounts, ancient documents.
Of Jesus'
Jesus.
So, right?
Yeah,
but that's all we're talking about.
No, we're talking about Jesus.
We're talking
being
about
Messiah.
Yeah,
we're talking about Jesus being God,
supernatural.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually just watching. Because you said that, I was just watching the Naked Archaeologist yesterday. And if you've seen the Naked Archaeologist, no. This is not what it sounds like. He's if this man was naked, nobody would watch it. He's not a pretty man. but just watch the Naked Archaeologist. He's talking about James ossuary. And this ossuary, James, the brother of Jesus, it mentions Jesus, brother of James, son of God or something. You can look it up, but there is. I mean, the Bible is pretty black and white on what it says and what Jesus claims. Like that's not in question. But extra biblical sources, they do exist.
Yeah. And I just want to add one point to this.
Go ahead.
It is a right and valid question for you guys to be asking us, like, what evidence you have for God exists. And I think it is perfectly right for us to land on Jesus, because if God exists, we can't even begin to understand a God that's outside of the cosmos, right? We have no tools to be able
outside
to...
of our logic and reality.
I would argue that's the beauty of logic.
But if God comes into the physical world and becomes physical, then we can begin to grapple with him. Then we can begin to interact. Then we can start asking questions. If God is just out there, all we're going to do is go round and round and round in circles. But if God came here, there is every bit of, like, our time and effort is well spent in, is this man truly God, and what difference does he make in our lives?
Right. How would God, because we're talking about logic. Like, sometimes we celebrate logic and we say, that this is how we can prove things as human beings. So then we go to logic and we go to Jesus. As Rod was saying, he's saying, okay, if you want to talk about something we can understand in relation to Jesus and our finite logic and our experience, historical, whatever, then we'll point you to Jesus when we're talking about God, because that's God with men on earth, and so that's something that is tangible, we can touch, we can explain. But when we then you don't like logic, Then when we start using logical things about Jesus,
well, no, you're just misusing logic.
But how are we misusing logic?
Well, because you're taking things to be you're like I said, you're making deductive arguments where you're saying, given that premise 1 is true and premise 2 is true, the conclusion must be true.
That's exactly what you're doing. You're saying,
right, exactly. But I'm saying that premise 1 is not true. But you're jumping.
But you're not using any evidence to say that premise 1 is not true. Yeah, you're just saying it's not true based on your opinion.
I'm saying it's not true based on the fact that I have no reason to believe that it's true.
But your belief doesn't dictate reality.
Yes, true.
You need
and
proof.
Likewise, your belief doesn't dictate reality.
But there's two things that we're going with logic and we're going with belief. We believe in God. That's not we can't use logic to explain belief. That is the limit of, and that's even why I want to talk about Roman and his experience, because there's a limitation. You have to respect that science there's a limit to science, and,
Yes,
and
there's
there's
a
a
limit
limit
to
to
science.
logic as well.
No,
right?
no, there is no
There
limit
is a limit to
logic.
logic.
There's
When
no
you're
limit to
explaining
logic.
something outside of our realm, of a reality, then
No, that's the beauty of logic, is there's
finite
no
human beings
limits
cannot
to it.
explain an
Even
infinite
logic
God.
has to be based on assumptions.
But no, you have to.
If you have to have
no,
first starting
listen.
principles that are assumed in logic, or you couldn't get logic off the ground.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like, okay, you can't explain belief through logic. Why do you believe? Because in the Bible is not logically sound. What's your next reason for believing? I had an experience. Do you think that there's a better reason why you didn't get?
Well, let me just one final statement.
I have to stop.
One thing. Can I just say one thing?
No,
Please.
No, we're
Let me say
5
one
minutes
thing.
over time.
Because you throw
cutting you
belief
off
into
here.
your logic. You say,
Thank you.
This is.
I gotta cut you off.
This is my. I don't.
do it. I cut you off, Graydon. I cut you off. You're already off. All right. I'm sorry, everyone. We will continue this We will continue this debate next week, same time, same place. Thank you, everyone, for listening.